A Wall Street economist built a supercar so ugly that Time magazine called it one of the worst cars ever made. It got banned from racing for winning too much. This is the story of sports cars that looked absolutely ridiculous but humiliated million-dollar supercars. In 1959, two men in a small Welsh town decided to build a sports car from plywood. Critics laughed until the thing started winning races. The Marcos GT looked like someone squashed a proper sports car with a hydraulic press, but this ridiculous wooden wedge would help launch Jackie Stewart's racing career and embarrass cars costing far more money. The story starts in Dolgellau, North Wales, where Jem Marsh and Frank Costin founded their company. The name itself tells you everything. Mar from Marsh, COS from Costin. Simple, practical, very British. Jem Marsh stood 6 feet 4 inches tall and loved racing. Frank Costin had spent the war designing the de Havilland mosquito bomber, a plane famous for being built from wood. When these two decided to make a sports car, they brought together racing passion and aircraft engineering in the most unlikely way possible. Their first creation was the Xylon racing car in 1959. The automotive press immediately dubbed it the Ugly Duckling. 9 race cars were built, followed by 39 production versions through 1963. Despite looking absolutely absurd, the Xylon won races instantly. Jackie Stewart borrowed one for his first 4 races and won every single one. This wooden oddity was doing something very right. The real breakthrough came in 1964 when Dennis and Peter Adams joined as stylists after Costin left. They created the GT 1800 model, and suddenly Marcos had a car that not only won races, but actually looked the part. Well, mostly. At just 43 inches tall at the roof, the Marcos GT remained one of the lowest production cars ever built. One modern owner discovered his car was so low he could drive under his community security gate without opening it. No gate opener needed. Just duck and drive straight through. The engineering behind this pancake on wheels was genuinely revolutionary. Each chassis used 386 individually cut pieces of marine plywood, cemented together to form a monocoque structure. The techniques came directly from those mosquito bombers Costin had worked on during the war. The thickness varied from 5-ply to 1/8 inch, depending on structural requirements. The result was a chassis that weighed just 475 kilograms, or 1,047 pounds, when internationally homologated. That is lighter than many motorcycle engines. The body construction was equally clever. Lightweight fiberglass covered the wooden skeleton, with the entire nose portion hinged at the front and held by latches behind the front wheel wells. This gave mechanics incredible access to everything mechanical, practical and surprisingly elegant in its simplicity. But driving one required commitment. The seating position was nearly supine, described at the time as lying back at full stretch on modern Grand Prix lines. The seats were fixed, mounted lower than the floor level itself. Instead of adjustable seats, Marcos engineered adjustable pedals. The entire pedal assembly moved forward and backward, using a dashboard-mounted wheel, later upgraded to electric motors. This bizarre system could accommodate drivers from short folks to Jem Marsh himself at 6 feet 4 inches. Your head ended up positioned near the rear axle. Journalists struggled to describe how strange it felt, yet the visibility and driver feedback proved excellent. Engine options varied wildly over the years. The GT 1500 used a Ford Kent inline 4 from 1964 to 1966. The GT 1800 featured a Volvo B 18,778 cubic centimeter cast iron 4-cylinder with overdrive gearbox and De Dion rear axle. The most popular model was the GT 1600, with 192 units built between 1966 and 1969. This version hit 60 miles per hour, or 97 kilometers per hour, in 7.9 seconds, and topped out at 120 miles per hour, or 193 kilometers per hour. The GT3 liter arrived in 1969 with a Ford Essex V6 3000 and 12 cubic centimeter single carburetor engine. Between 100 and 119 units were produced with the wood chassis. This one reached 60 miles per hour in 7.2 seconds and could exceed 125 miles per hour, or 201 kilometers per hour. The racing success was immediate and sustained. Jackie Stewart won his first 4 races in that borrowed Xylon. Moss won 9 victories in 10 starts in 1961. John Sutton won the Autosport Championship that same year. Derek Bell, Jackie Oliver, and Jonathan Palmer all drove Marcos cars early in their careers. These were not weekend warriors. These were future Formula One drivers and Le Mans legends using a plywood car as their proving ground. The lightweight construction gave the Marcos a power-to-weight ratio that rivaled purpose-built race cars. While competitors showed up with 400 horsepower and steel frames weighing twice as much, the Marcos simply drove around them through corners. The wooden chassis provided remarkable rigidity, and the supine driving position created an incredibly low center of gravity. Physics does not care what your car looks like. It only cares about the numbers. The company faced serious challenges. In 1970, United States Customs impounded 27 cars destined for the American market over regulatory issues with the construction methods. The financial impact, combined with new value-added tax on kit cars, forced the company to close. Jem Marsh bought the spare parts at the liquidation sale and spent the next decade servicing existing Marcos cars. In 1981, against all odds, he resumed kit production. The legacy continued into the 1990s and 2000s. The LM600 took pole position on its debut and won in the GT2 class in its second race. Marcos went on to dominate and win the BRDC National Sports GT Championship in 1995, followed by UK GT Championship titles in 1995, 1996, 1997, and 2000. At the 1995 Le Mans 24 Hours, a Marcos finished 7th in class. The wooden car concept, refined with modern composite materials, remained competitive across 5 decades. The Marcos GT proved that ridiculous could be revolutionary. Critics mocked the plywood chassis until it started beating aluminum and steel competitors. The comically low height that made entry and exit undignified also created aerodynamic efficiency and handling precision that professional drivers praised. The bizarre adjustable pedal system solved a problem other manufacturers ignored entirely. Every feature that made the Marcos look absurd was precisely what made it devastatingly effective on track. The ugly duckling became a giant killer, and Jem Marsh's wooden sports car showed that unconventional thinking could triumph over conventional wisdom. Picture a sports car designed by someone who looked at a German microcar and thought, yes, but make it a roadster and remove the doors. The Goggomobil Dart was 3 meters long, weighed 345 kilograms, and ran on a 293 cubic centimeter 2-stroke engine that sounded like an angry lawnmower. It looked like a bathtub toy someone accidentally left in the sun too long. Yet this tiny Australian oddball could not only keep up with traffic, it became a genuine cult classic and sold nearly 700 units before the world moved on. The Dart was born from necessity and taxes. Bill Buckle was a racing driver turned car dealer in Sydney, Australia, importing German Goggomobil microcars. Australian import taxes were crushing his business. Then Buckle discovered a loophole. Import just the chassis and pay less tax, then build local bodywork on top. Suddenly, he was not just an importer. He was a manufacturer. Buckle designed the vehicle himself in 1958. He was a racing driver, not an automotive designer, and it showed in the most charming way possible. He handed his drawings to a panel beater named Stan Brown, who created an aluminum-bodied prototype. That prototype became the mold for production fiberglass shells. The development process was remarkably quick, even by 1950s standards. Designed to production in under a year. The public debut came in June 1959, and Australians fell in love immediately. Buckle Motors could not keep up with demand. At peak production, they were building 7 darts per day, and the factory was operating at maximum capacity. For a brief moment, Bill Buckle had created exactly what the market wanted: an affordable, fun, uniquely Australian sports car experience. The construction was brilliantly simple. The body was a 2-piece fiberglass shell bolted together at the waistline. There were no doors. None. You climbed over the side like mounting a horse. The car sat so low that Buckle figured doors were unnecessary weight and complexity. The seats hinged up and back to let you swing your legs in. Entry and exit looked undignified, especially in business attire. But in warm Australian weather with the top down, it actually made sense. The dimensions were almost comical: 3 meters long, which is about 9.8 feet. That is shorter than a modern Mini Cooper. The width was 1.3 meters, or about 4.3 feet. Weight varied between 345 and 380 kilograms depending on specification, which translates to 761 to 840 pounds. Some motorcycles weigh more. The engine was a German Goggomobil parallel twin-cylinder 2-stroke. The base version displaced 293 cubic centimeters and produced 15 horsepower. The upgraded 400 cubic centimeter version made a whopping 20 horsepower. Top speed with the larger engine was around 65 miles per hour, or 104 kilometers per hour, though conservative estimates put it closer to 53 miles per hour, or 85 kilometers per hour, depending on how many people and how much luggage you were carrying. With a brave driver, you could reportedly hit 100 kilometers per hour, or 62 miles per hour. The 2-stroke engine meant oil mixed with fuel, which produced smoky exhaust and a distinctive smell. Period owners described the experience as bizarre, cramped, smoky, and tiny. But they also described it with genuine affection. The Dart had character. Loads of it. The layout was rear-engine, rear-wheel drive with a 4-speed manual transmission. There was a small luggage compartment built into the nose. A proper front trunk, or frunk, decades before that, became a trendy term. Storage was limited, but functional for weekend trips. Here is where the engineering brilliance revealed itself. That 345-kilogram weight with 20 horsepower gave the Dart a power-to-weight ratio of about 57.5 pounds per horsepower. Contemporary sports cars typically sat around 100 pounds per horsepower, or worse. The Dart could genuinely keep up with much larger, more powerful cars because it weighed almost nothing. Colin Chapman would later make Simplify, then add Lightness famous with Lotus. Bill Buckle was already living that philosophy in 1959. The fiberglass construction offered multiple advantages. It was lighter than steel, completely corrosion-resistant, which mattered enormously in coastal Australia, and easy to repair. Gelcoat repairs were simple. Colors were customizable, and the material was cost-effective for low-volume production. Buckle had accidentally demonstrated that fiberglass was ideal for specialist sports cars. The handling characteristics were surprisingly good. The rear engine layout provided traction where you needed it. The low weight reduced tire stress. The short wheelbase made the Dart incredibly nimble through corners. The low center of gravity enhanced cornering stability. It was genuinely fun to drive, despite the modest performance numbers. More importantly, it was affordable to purchase, cheap to operate, and inexpensive to insure and register. Bill Buckle had found a genuine market gap. The Dart was more fun than a microcar sedan, more affordable than imported British sports cars like MG or Triumph, and uniquely Australian in a market dominated by imports. For young buyers and enthusiasts on budgets, it was perfect. Then reality arrived in the form of 2 disasters. First, in 1959, the Morris Mini Minor launched. The Mini offered revolutionary front-wheel drive, 4 seats instead of 2, better performance, and actually cost less. It was simply better value. The Dart could not compete with the Mini's practicality and packaging efficiency. Sales began to collapse. The second blow came in 1960, when the Australian government imposed a 40% sales tax on cars. Combined with the mini stealing market share, this devastated Dart sales completely. Buckle was forced to end production in September 1961. The total run was just over 2 years. Approximately 697 Darts were built. Related Goggomobil production by Buckle Motors totaled around 5,000 units, including saloons, coupes, and vans. But the Dart was finished. The survival rate tells its own story. From 697 produced, only about 100 remain today. That is a 14% survival rate. Many were lost to accidents, used as parts donors when engines seized, or simply abandoned when replacement parts became unavailable. Two-stroke engines required proper oil mixing. Without it, they seized. The Australian climate was harsh on exposed roadsters. Each survivor is now precious. But the Dart achieved something remarkable. It became a true icon of Australian motoring history and a symbol of the Australian have-a-go entrepreneurial spirit. The famous Yellow Pages commercial with the catchphrase, "Not the Dart," entered Australian popular culture and ensured the car's place in national memory long after production ended. What looked like a toy car actually delivered a sports car experience at a fraction of the cost. The ridiculous appearance masked genuine engineering intelligence. Bill Buckle understood that sports car feel came from weight, not just power. The Dart proved you did not need 6 cylinders and expensive mechanicals to enjoy open-air motoring. The silly appearance actually became an asset. Owners enjoyed the reactions and the car's cheeky character. The joke was on skeptics who dismissed it without driving one. The Goggomobil Dart looked absurd, worked brilliantly, and became an Australian legend in just 697 examples. In 1985, a Wall Street economist with no automotive engineering background decided to build a supercar. Warren Mosler looked at expensive Italian exotics and asked a simple question: why do they weigh so much? His answer was the Consigliere GTP, a car that Time magazine would call truly one of the ugliest cars ever made. It was also the first production car with a carbon fiber and Kevlar composite monocoque, years ahead of the McLaren F1. The GTP was so ugly it hurt to look at, and so fast it got banned from multiple racing series for winning too much. Warren Mosler was not a car guy in the traditional sense. He was an economist and financial trader, but he brought an outsider's perspective that questioned everything the automotive industry took for granted. Why did supercars need heavy steel frames? Why could the aviation industry use composite materials successfully, but cars could not? Mosler started Consigliere Industries in 1985 to prove his theories. The name came from consul, meaning advisor or consultant. He was about to give the automotive world some advice it did not want to hear. The development philosophy was extreme. Function over form, taken to its logical conclusion. No professional stylist was ever hired. Mosler engineered for performance and completely ignored aesthetics. Components were borrowed from Chrysler wherever practical. The focus was purely on lightweight construction and handling. The result looked like someone built a sports car in their garage using parts from a junkyard, which in a sense, Mosler did. The construction was genuinely revolutionary. The Consigliere GTP featured the first composite monocoque tub in a production car. The body used carbon fiber, Kevlar, fiberglass, and closed cell foam bonded and riveted together. There was no structural metal in the body. This was aviation-grade composite technique applied to automotive manufacturing. The industry thought Mosler was insane. Years later, every hypercar manufacturer would copy exactly what he pioneered. The chassis and body created remarkable structural rigidity despite weighing almost nothing. The Series 1 from 1988 to 1990 weighed 2,200 pounds, or 1,000 kilograms. Some configurations got down to 1,950 pounds. For comparison, The contemporary Chevrolet Corvette ZR1 weighed around 3,500 pounds. The Porsche 911 Turbo was about 3,000 pounds. The GTP was one-third lighter than comparable performance cars. The engine was a Chrysler 2.2-liter inline-4 turbo. The Series 1 used the Turbo 2, making 175 horsepower. The Series 2, from 1990 to 1993, upgraded to the Turbo 3, producing 190 horsepower. These were not impressive numbers. A Corvette made twice that power, but the GTP proved that power-to-weight ratio mattered more than peak horsepower. Performance numbers were respectable. 0 to 60 miles per hour, or 97 kilometers per hour, happened in under 6 seconds, with some sources citing 5.5 seconds. Top speed reached approximately 150 miles per hour, or 241 kilometers per hour for the Series 1, and 155 miles per hour, or 249 kilometers per hour for the Series 2. The quarter-mile passed in the low 14-second range, not earth-shattering, but achieved with just 190 horsepower. The handling was where the GTP became supernatural. The mid-engine layout provided optimal weight distribution. The composite monocoque delivered exceptional rigidity. The low weight reduced tire stress and enabled lightning-fast direction changes. Professional drivers praised the balance. Skid pad numbers showed exceptional lateral grip. Braking was outstanding due to low weight. On a technical track, the GTP embarrassed cars costing 3 to 4 times more. Model variants showed Mosler understood different buyers. The GTP Sport was the base model. Spartan interior, track-focused specification, minimal amenities, weight-saving measures throughout. A pure performance tool. The GTP LX added luxury features: Recaro seats, VDO instrumentation, Fittipaldi wheels, Alpine sound system, sunroof, leather upholstery, air conditioning, cruise control, power locks, mirrors and windows, tilt steering wheel, and wool carpet. It was still lightweight by conventional standards. Special variants included 8 Targa tops, 2 roadsters, 20 purpose-built race cars, and several track-time driving school cars. Total production from 1985 to 1996 was approximately 83 units, though some sources cite a range from 60 to 100 due to incomplete documentation. The racing history is where the GTP legend was born. The debut came at Lime Rock Park in 1991. The GTP took pole position and won the race outright. The car weighed 2,100 pounds and made 195 horsepower. It defeated competitors weighing over 3,000 pounds with more than 400 horsepower. The GTP went 1-2, with 2 GTPs finishing in the top positions. The list of defeated competitors tells the whole story. Hurley Haywood's factory backed Porsche 911 Turbo, Boris Said's Callaway twin-turbo Corvette, Jim Miniker's factory ZR1 Corvette. The GTP beat them all through handling and weight advantage, not raw power. Victory at Laguna Seca followed, defeating Porsches, Corvettes, and Firebirds again. This was not luck. This was superior engineering. IMSA responded by imposing a 300-pound weight penalty. The GTP remained competitive, so IMSA banned the car entirely from the series. The official reason was being too competitive in its class. The Consulier GTP was so effective, it had to be prohibited. Car and Driver's One Lap of America event eventually banned it for winning too often. The Mosler Intruder, the GTP's successor, won the longest day of Nelson 24-hour race in 1993 and 1994. Nelson Ledges banned it after those back-to-back victories. Getting banned from multiple racing series for being too good is the ultimate validation. The GTP proved its engineering superiority by being prohibited from competition. But the appearance was a disaster. Even admirers acknowledged the GTP was ugly. The wedge-shaped profile, slab-sided bodywork, and angular shapes appeared unrefined. Exposed fasteners and rivets were visible in places. Panel gaps were irregular on some examples. There was no professional styling evident anywhere. The interior showed obvious Chrysler parts, bin components. K-car switchgear was clearly visible. The track-time driving school cars that car and driver tested had 3 cigarette lighters, a detail the magazine mocked endlessly, while failing to mention these were driving school modifications, not factory specifications. The controversy with car and driver became a defining moment. Warren Mosler had offered a $25,000 bounty to anyone who could beat the GTP around any United States racetrack in a street-legal production car. Car and driver accepted the challenge with a 1991 Chevrolet Corvette against a 1988 GTP Series 1 Sport. The test used a track-time driving school car that was 3 years old with thousands of hard miles, worn tires, worn brake pads, and stripped interior. The Corvette won by 1.55 seconds. Car and driver published the results in a negative and sarcastic light, ridiculing the borrowed car's condition. The article damaged the GTP's reputation significantly, despite the test conditions being completely unfair. Time magazine listed the GTP among the 50 worst cars of all time based purely on appearance. Performance achievements were ignored. The GTP appeared on multiple worst car lists alongside genuine failures. The ugly reputation was difficult to overcome. But time has vindicated Warren Mosler completely. Composite monocoque construction is now standard in every hypercar. McLaren, Ferrari, and Lamborghini use the technology Mosler pioneered in 1988. Carbon fiber tubs are in every modern supercar. The automotive industry adopted what it once mocked. The Consigliere GTP was not ugly and stupid. It was ugly and visionary. Collectors are rediscovering the GTP as a forgotten American supercar. The historical significance is increasing values. The technology pioneering status is recognized. The racing provenance is valuable. The controversial reputation adds interest. What looked like an automotive disaster was actually a triumph of engineering over convention. Warren Mosler proved that you could build a world-class performance car with Chrysler parts and composites if you understood physics and ignored aesthetics. The GTP looked ridiculous, worked brilliantly, and changed supercar construction forever.